alaikum, peace and blessings, and welcome to Donald Bakir's podcast. We are live January 31st, 2021 at Carlton Studios, 100 yards from the Sci-Fi Football Stadium. I have here with me my guest, South Central LA legend, Haji OG Donald Bakir. I guess we all want to know, where did you get the name OG Bobby Johnson? Where does that originate from?
OG Bobby Johnson is OG Willie Black, Jimmy Willie Black, in the novel Crips, which I wrote in 1986. When we translated the story to the big screen, the director decided that a better name for the hero would be Bobby Johnson rather than Jimmy Black. When you're in negotiations to try to get something done, you have to be amenable to change. So I acquiesced, and OG Jimmy Willie Black became OG Bobby Johnson. But even bigger than that, the term OG, which was like the ultimate hero, I began to change the image of OG. I changed it from pariah to hero. But now we got younger brothers, when they do communicate to older brothers, they call him OG with pride, and the older brothers accept it and love it like we used to love bro or brother. Okay, so that OG was what was most important about that name. Now youngsters try to call me OG, right? I accept that now because I've changed the meaning from original gangster to original griot. So those kind of terms, OG, 24/7, they made youth drop their guard around me. When I spoke that dialect, when I validated it by calling it poetry, when everybody refused to call rap poetry in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s, where everybody disdained it, spoke of it in demeaning terms, I welcomed it. I sweetened it. I taught them device. I taught them poetic technique. So I guess that's where OG Bobby Johnson
So we're going to
came
go to
from.
a commercial break, and when we come back, we will talk about Donald Bakir's life before he became a social activist / educator.
Got my COVID shots. Our enemies think we are morally weak. They don't think red and blue can come together with enough unity to reach our goal of 70% herd immunity. But they don't know enough about us to know how much we care about red, white, and blue America. There will be no schism in our patriotism. The America forged out of our common experience, history, fashioned by our common creator, is always illuminating God's way. There will be no schism in this patriotism. And although the devils have attacked us, America will be victorious. We will prevail over the evil virus. Get your shots. Get your shots, America. Get your shots.
in South Central and that you had lived there for, you said 60 years.
50.
50, okay. My apologies. So I wanted you to tell us more about 74th Street and, you know, the East Side when you were living there.
When I first came to South Central LA, I thought I was coming to Watts. In 1970, I lived on 116th and Figueroa, what was then like West Watts. But I had to move for the Century Freeway because the freeway was coming through everybody, and our building had to move. And I moved eventually into a house on 74th Street and on the east side of Los Angeles. 74th Street seems, if you drive through it now, it seems like a quiet, well-kept, proud to some extent neighborhood. But when I moved on it in 1973, it was gang-ridden. It was Bloods on one side of the street, 77 Swans.
Wow.
Crips on the side of the street where I resided with my family of 6.
This is when you had children at the time.
When I first moved there, I only had 2 children.
Okay.
And when I first moved there, it was only one house, 149.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought the house for like $7,200
Wow.
back in those days. And my mortgage payment was $49 a month.
That's different now.
Now it's worth much more.
Much more.
But what I did was I put my roots in South Central.
Okay.
I bought a house as the Century Freeway was moving all the houses in its wake, all the way from Linwood, Downey to the airport. Those houses were moved to lots where they would be purchased. There was a government auction of some houses that had been in Linwood. And because of the information I got from a mogul named Ted Washington, not Ted Watkins.
Okay.
Ted Watkins, who was like owned Watts, most of the real estate, more so than any other black, anybody individually.
Right.
He had been given first crack at every house that was moved from Downey to the airport
Wow.
by the governor. So I was hanging out with him and talking to him. I couldn't believe what all he had going. He showed me all his houses. They were too big for my lot, because I had bought the lot next door to the house on 74th Street.
Really?
Yeah, it got burnt down and went through a lot. So I finally wound up buying it, clearing it, and moved this house from this freeway that I bought in this auction
Okay.
for $200, $100 a unit. It was a duplex. I bought it. Ted Watkins had a house moving company. He moved it, socked it into the side of my existing house, and I had a 17-room palace.
Wow.
So, I had PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So one of the parts of that can be you become catatonic. What people jump and get real scared about and may have a hissy fit about, or, I don't even see sometimes. I do a lot better now. But back then, when I would see kids with pistols, I'd wave at them to put them up. You know what I mean? And frown at them and then know they'd put them up. And it's like, when they saw me coming, they put out the cigarette.
Right.
It was like, So I didn't realize how bad socially the block was
Right.
until I reflected and started counting the people who had been killed on that one block in 17 years that we lived there. It was 20 people had been killed on one block right in front of my window.
Wow. So you've seen a lot.
All my kids saw it.
Right.
You know, it gave them, it was not a good environment at all. But 74th Street was the beginning of black people giving up the only section of homes in Los Angeles they owned outright without even a mortgage. The East Side, because nobody wanted to live there.
Right.
You know, it was still houses burned out from the 1965 riots.
Right.
But it always got better.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I was like, this is the same ground that's in Beverly Hills. You know, you just have to. What Ted Watkins said, don't move, improve. So that's what we did. You know, and put a big pink wall around it.
Right.
You know, and a basketball court on the pavement, and you know, lived like it was a mansion to us.
You
You
didn't
know,
want to leave your community. You wanted to improve it.
and I wanted to go into schools and change things. So you know, we changed some stuff too. We changed some stuff. You know, people think, oh, the Crip Wars. There was like 1,000 people being killed a year in LA in the gang wars back in the 80s, in the early 90s. They think it stopped because the police started putting people in prison. All the bad guys got shot up, killed up.
Right.
But they don't realize that at the time when red and blue would get you killed, in like 1984, 85, 86, 87, I realized that started in the schools. When we changed the uniforms, I wrote a program for the LA Unified School District.
Right.
Yeah, I had a committee. And we wrote a program for 3 model schools, 95th Street Elementary, Bret Harte Junior High School, and Washington Prep. And one of the things in it was uniforms. And the uniforms were neutral colors. It started in elementary school, 95th Street Elementary.
Right.
By the time they got to high school, red and blue had no significance. Definitely prompted no hate. And as it became a tradition, there was not that hardcore struggle, fight, massacre going on. So suddenly, the tradition softened and changed. One of the things, gangsters, when I was teaching in Horace Mann, gangsters didn't read. You could catch a beat down from walking home with a book bag.
Wow.
You know, that wasn't what gangsters did. If you got a book bag, you better have a piece in it.
Right.
You better have a Roscoe.
Being educated was dangerous.
Dude, kids, you roll up on the set, they be like, "Cuz, what you got in your..." So what you got in that book bag?
Right.
Man, you better try to find you a 9.
You get in trouble for reading.
You better catch you a 9 or something, man. Hey, what if them roll, A-Train Gangsters roll up on you, what you gonna throw that?
Right. It was more about protecting yourself than
Better
being
have some
educated.
function.
Right.
Because they had given up on reading.
Right.
Average brother was illiterate.
It wasn't
Became
their concern.
part of their religion. Cripping is a religion.
Yeah.
Okay, you do it 24/7. Okay? And
There's no book that teaches you how to be a Crip.
I mean, it was worse than a slave.
Right.
Get caught with a book. It just wasn't. It
Right.
was subtle. It was real subtle. So what I changed it to was this. I inspired a brother. I was writing to a brother on not death row, Pelican Bay, Max.
Yeah.
And this brother was a dynamic leader. He's one of those youngsters, you couldn't even say it or his name. You said his name, Monster Cody, people would start out. So you couldn't even say it out loud.
He had a reputation.
Super rap, okay, and get all buffed up, right?
Now, was he gang affiliated?
He was one of the leaders of the 8 Track Gangster
All right.
Crips. You know, but he could write. Somehow he learned to
He
write.
was educated as well.
I don't know about educated. Yeah, not in a traditional way.
In the
right?
traditional way.
I mean, he could write the gang graffiti. He could write, just regular script. But and was thinking real deep. So his sister was in my English class, and man, we got to writing each other's stuff. But him and Ice-T
Okay.
wrote books.
Right.
They would encourage. My book came out in 1986, Crips. This book, the one that became the movie South Central. Yeah. His book came out a little later. It's called Monster. And all of a sudden you start having hood literature. And basically, it was bad on morals, but the literacy level went up. Whereas it used to be you catch a beat down for writing. Suddenly they don't know it. They writing rhymes.
Right.
They're writing even books too.
Right.
So I was trying to contribute to that. I was trying to change that dynamic. And fortunately, I think it had some effect upon it. I know I helped validate it.
Now, you were saying that, during your time in teaching that you had a lot of people, specifically young kids, being made fun of for reading and writing, and they would get bullied or they would get beat up for reading and writing, and they would get asked, why don't you have something to protect yourself, like a gun or whatever. And, you were also making a similarity about slavery and us not being allowed to read. So I was going to ask you, do you feel there is a correlation between not being allowed to read in slavery, fast forward to you being a teacher, and these kids are being made fun of for reading and writing? Do you feel that there is a correlation between those two things?
The teachers demanded that you read what they wanted you to read. During slavery, it was, as I said, haram to read. You would be beaten, tortured, and maybe even killed. After a while, decades and decades and decades of that.
Right.
There's a psychological disdain to some extent, or fear of reading, even when you're not necessarily going to be beaten, but psychologically.
It's embedded in you.
It's embedded.
Yeah.
And
The trauma from that.
if you look at the census, you'll see after slavery, after 1860s, there's a box for reading, a box for writing. The majority of African Americans only started checking most of those boxes in 1900. So before that, we were almost totally illiterate.
Exactly.
We've reached a point, though, that about 70% to 75% of us are literate. Check those boxes, right?
Right.
But that 25 to 30% is very dynamic. They are explosive, and I think as W.B. Du Bois said around the turn of the century, they said, what is going to be the problem of the 20th century? He said, the color line. The color line.
Right.
If you have enough light skin, then you're going to read.
Right.
Your tradition is that you will read, okay? But that 25% who can't read in this technological society, ricochet off of, wind up in jail, wind up in prison, wind up at the homeless, the dregs of society. You know, nobody addresses that. My attempt was to write something that they would be compelled to read, to make a movie about it. South Central values that aggrandized, lifted up the African American male's character, that hero that we all accept among ourselves, you know, OG, that OG, okay? That was part of my plan to make reading a part of our traditions, our deepest tradition, you know, certain poems, or, you know, it already is with songs, with R&B on that poetry is you know, indelible in kids that have never read a book. But I want to push the lower level of literacy in America, the more prosperous, the healthier, mentally, physically, spiritually. So most cultures, like Jews, they have certain books everybody has to read. You know,
it's required in the culture.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's introduced to the Diary of Anne Frank and
exactly. Even I, as a kid, it was required of me to read the Diary of Anne Frank.
It should be stuff like that for African American kids.
And we don't have access to things like that. It's not required of us to read literature written by African Americans. We have to read, most of the literature that's required is written by white authors.
But we can't blame, you know, white authors, even though
you know,
they do have fingerprints on, you know, the money. But we need to, as individuals, like what I want in my family is for my book Crips, my book I Too Can Create Light, you know, for my books to be books that my progeny, my grandkids, my kids read, you know. I would like that to be for a whole lot more African Americans, right? And may well at some point be. But what I did was, I made it like that in South Central. You know, every kid has seen South Central, the movie. You know, and now OG went from being pariah's appendage, you know, to being something that even I'm proud to be called, pleased to be called. I think we need to have control of our literature.
All right, so we have reached the end of Donald Bakir's podcast. We want to thank Donald Bakir for joining us. Thank you for sharing your life with us. We really appreciate it here. My name is Nia Bakir, and thank you to the viewers for watching as well. Assalamu alaikum, peace and blessings.
No doubt. Yeah. What?
South Central. Inglewood.
Yeah.
Hollywood. Alley's a place.
Yeah. South Central.
Alley's a place.
Yeah. Affiliated from wherever you come from. I bang on niggas with the highs and kick drums. If you bad it up, nigga, then get some. I'm from the streets, I got the heat for with the mission, assume the position. Rhymes is lethal, register with the street people, ain't no equal. Rhymes is cock diesel, born and raised in the streets of LA, with gunplay spray every day, all day. Nigga, can you relate? Hip hopping in the gang bang state. What? I blast rhymes and bust a slug in your face. Some niggas blast knives, some niggas blast AKs. The inner city circle way, and yo, I grew up with killers, bankers and thugs, drug dealing niggas and bitches.